If you are currently enjoying or have ever benefited from public education, then you can thank your ancestors for the colossal disaster that was the Great Depression, because it shaped our school system into what it is today. America's most spectacular economic disaster gave us modern concepts such as centralized curricula, government financial support for schools, and social promotion. And although the Depression shut down thousands of schools and decreased overall attendance at elementary and middle schools, it actually increased the high school graduation rate and membership of teachers' unions. To understand how the Great Depression changed the school system, let us first examine education in the years leading up to the economic crash. The Roaring Twenties were a period of uncontrolled economic growth, during which production, stock, and the workforce all increased dramatically. School districts experienced similar growth. Student attendance increased, and new schools were built to accommodate them. New programs were introduced, such as health services, physical education, adult education, kindergartens, the arts, and vocational classes. More teachers were hired, and their annual pay increased from $871 in 1920 to $1,420 in 1930. Despite this prosperity, the school system was far from perfect. Its greatest failing was a lack of education and curricula standards. One of the new educational programs introduced during the 1920s was a series of saving campaigns promoted by the Savings Bank Division of the American Bankers Association, with the support of the National Education Association. The program was designed to teach school children about finance and the personal discipline of saving. Unfortunately, the lesson backfired. During the first banking panic in 1930, almost 4 million children in 14,000 schools lost more than $29 million in savings. Aside from individual teacher and student losses, the economic crash failed to significantly affect the prosperous school districts until 1932, when revenue and funding declined. Schools that had expanded during the 20s found themselves in debt that they couldn't pay back. The indebtedness of schools increased from $93 million in 1930 to $137 million in 1934. Banks and tax leagues demanded that school funding, programs, and teachers' salaries be reduced, and that education be downsized to its bare minimum. By 1934, the worst financial year for education, school funding and spending had dropped to what they were in 1913. As a result of funding cuts, thousands of schools across the U.S. closed. Many school districts combined small institutions and closed elementary schools. Nationwide school attendance dropped because of closed schools, but high school attendance increased dramatically. It was common during the 1920s for a teenager to leave high school to get a job, but the Great Depression severely limited the job market and increased unemployment to 25%. For the first time, teenagers had nothing to gain from job searching and nothing to lose from free public education. The high school graduation rate rose from 30% of teenagers in 1930 to 50% in 1940. High schools now had to balance increased students with decreased staff, resources, and funds. To save money, school districts increased class sizes. Another new cost-cutting practice was social promotion, or the policy of passing students up a grade every year. These changes, along with businesses standardizing textbooks and school supplies, were some of the factors that made education more efficient during the Depression. One of the most important changes to the U.S. school system was the policy of states giving monetary aid to school districts. Schools had traditionally been funded by local property taxes, creating unequal distribution of wealth for education. When local revenue ran out in 1932, states were forced to support education, and in doing so, they standardized financial practices, curricula, and testing. States also enacted tenure and certification laws, which protected the jobs of remaining teachers and allowed them more control of their classes. Meanwhile, teachers increasingly joined unions to represent their interests. Membership in the American Federation of Teachers and the National Education Association increased dramatically. United by organizations, school districts cooperated to centralize and rationalize educational goals and resources. The most federal support for educational progress came from three of Roosevelt's New Deal organizations: the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which provided financial assistance to over 4,000 rural schools by paying teachers' salaries, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which conducted various education programs for underprivileged youth, and the Works Progress Administration, which built 5,900 new schools, along with other infrastructure projects. Many of the changes made to the school system during the 1930s are still present today. For better or for worse, U.S. education has been irrefutably shaped by the Great Depression.